Okay, let's get started. The world of crypto, it just moves so incredibly fast, doesn't it?
It really does. Keeping up feels like a full-time job sometimes.
Totally. It's like
Yeah.
every single day is just packed with news, analysis, market shifts, trying to stay on top of it all. It's a real challenge.
Absolutely. The sheer amount of information, it can be genuinely overwhelming.
And that's precisely why we're here. We want to help you navigate all of that.
Yep.
We've actually gathered a whole stack of sources, articles, research, different insights, but critically, everything published on just one day, June 16th, 2025.
Yeah, think of it like a curated snapshot. We're pulling out the most important threads from that single day in the crypto universe.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty simple. Cut through the noise. We're going to jump right into these June 16th sources, pull out the really key nuggets of knowledge and insight so you can get informed, quickly. This is tailored for you.
We'll look at what was going on with the major coins, where the market hype seemed to be focused, or also some really crucial things happening on the regulatory and legal side, all based only on what these sources were saying that day.
Perfect. Let's jump right in then. What did the sources tell us about the overall market picture on June 16th? One thing that jumped out was Cardano.
AGO.
Yes, ADA. And there was an interesting sort of contrast there. One source was suggesting that, well, ADA had seen a rally, but it might be losing steam, maybe by the end of Q3 2025.
Losing steam. Like hitting a price ceiling or something.
Kind of, yeah, pointing towards a potential stall on the price action later in the year.
Okay, but then almost immediately, another source from that same day seemed to paint a different picture, highlighting development momentum.
Exactly. That source focused on the actual Cardano development activity, saying it was showing significant momentum right now.
And they had evidence.
Metric.
They did. They pointed to rising on-chain metrics,
Okay.
like the number of delegated wallets hitting 1.33 million. Now, okay, the weekly increase was small, 0.04%, but on that huge base,
Still growth.
it's still growth, yeah. And that, plus the total number of native tokens on the network also increasing, it signals ongoing activity, development.
Hmm.
The ecosystem isn't, just static.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So for ADA, you've got this kind of push-pull, potential future price caution, but also current signs of network health and growth.
Mm.
Interesting. What about Solana, SOL? The sources seemed a bit more worried there.
They did, yeah. The picture for Solana on June 16th, according to these sources, was more concerning. It was apparently hovering right near its $140 support level.
And the worry was if it broke that level.
Correct. The concern raised was that if that specific $140 support didn't hold, it could risk, well, deeper losses, potentially sending the price down quite a bit, maybe towards the $100 zone.
Oof. And were there technical signals backing that up? There I saw mention of MBE and RSI.
Yes, exactly. The sources pointed to technicals like the MACD turning negative and the RSI being down around 40.03.
Which means below 50 is generally not great.
Right, it's below that neutral 50 mark. So as interpreted by these sources, it showed weak momentum right at that price point. A lack of strong buying pressure, maybe market indecision, plus reports of high volatility. It painted SOL as being at a pretty precarious technical spot.
Okay, precarious for SOL. Meanwhile, what about the big one? What were the sources saying about Bitcoin BTC on June 16th?
Bitcoin was looking more potentially positive. It was testing a key level, trying for a breakout above $106,000, according to one source.
A breakout attempt. Had it bounced from support before that?
It had, yeah. Apparently, it bounced off trendline support near 103K, which was seen as, a potentially bullish sign in itself.
Okay, so the thinking was if it could actually break and hold above 106K, especially with good trading volume,
Mm-hmm.
that could trigger a move higher, maybe towards $110.
That was the potential upside scenario highlighted in the source, yes. Breaking a clear resistance like 106K, especially if volume picks up alongside it, that's often read as a strengthening bullish signal.
Interesting. So just looking at these main coins from the June 16th sources, ADA's mixed signals, SOL looking risky at support, Bitcoin eyeing a potential breakout. What does that mix tell us about the overall market mood that day? Was it just all over the place?
It really suggests a market that wasn't moving as one single entity. You had clear points of potential weakness and risk, like with Solana, but at the same time, Bitcoin was attempting bullish moves, and established alts like Cardano had these conflicting narratives. It definitely wasn't a day where everything was just green or just red. Different assets were telling very different stories.
Right. Okay. Now, here's where it gets kind of interesting, connecting some dots. Remember you mentioned that ADA article suggested investors might look for alternatives if the rally stalled later.
Yeah, that idea of looking for maybe a $0.05 type of coin by Q3 end.
Exactly, that constant search for the next thing, or just diversification.
Oh yeah, it's always there in crypto. And the sources definitely picked up on that theme on the 16th.
And this search for alternatives seemed to tie into another piece of news about where momentum was building, right? Specifically, meme coins. Puppy coin, PEPE, was getting attention.
It was, yes. One source was actually pretty bullish on PEP. It predicted a new all-time high, a new eighth for PTE coming in Q3 2025.
Wow, okay, so that tells you where at least some of the speculative buzz and maybe capital flow was directed that day.
Clearly, yeah. Significant hype around PEP according to that report.
But interestingly, even within that PP hype article, it didn't just focus on PDE, did it? It mentioned investors were also looking somewhere else.
That's right. It mentioned that despite the spotlight on PPE, some eyes are also turning to a different kind of token, an under-the-radar DeFi token referenced as Mutum F.
Mutum F. Interesting they didn't give the full name, maybe emphasizing that under-the-radar aspect you mentioned.
Could be, or just how it was cited in the source. But what stood out was that it was framed as an alternative within DeFi. So not just chasing meme coin heat, but looking back into decentralized finance for perhaps undiscovered potential.
Okay, so that links back to the 88.2, looking for alternatives, but maybe in different sectors. Not just low-cap coins, but potentially functional DeFi projects, too.
Precisely. It shows this diverse landscape. You've got the majors at key technical levels. You've got the meme coin frenzy predicting new highs. And you have this quieter scouting going on for maybe hidden gems in DeFi. It really captures the multiple layers of the market on June 16th.
Absolutely. But, the market never exists in a vacuum, does it? The sources also flag some really crucial developments happening away from the price charts in the regulatory and legal world.
Yes, that's a critical piece. And the news on June 16th seemed pretty significant there based on these reports.
Well, let's start with the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. What was the news there?
Well, according to the sources, the big news was about actions taken under Chairman Paul Atkins. The SEC had apparently withdrawn 14 proposed crypto rules.
14, wow.
And quickly.
Within just 60 days, yeah. The sources describe this as signaling a potentially significant shift in how the commission might approach overseeing digital assets moving forward.
A shift. Like maybe towards a less interventionist stance. Withdrawing proposed rules sounds like pumping the brakes on new regulation, maybe?
That was certainly the interpretation hinted at in these articles, a change in direction or at least priority at the SEC regarding new crypto rulemaking.
Okay, so that's the regulatory agency. Then shifting over to the legal system, there was also major news about a specific trial coming up, right? The Tornado Cash founder.
Yes, Roman Storm. His trial for money laundering charges was set for July. And the sources really highlighted warnings attributed to the founder himself about what this case could mean.
Warnings out.
About potential industry-wide fallout. He apparently suggested the outcome could end up redefining some fundamental concepts.
Like what? This sounds serious. Well, things like the nature of DeFi itself, the rights around publishing open source software, and crucially, crypto privacy within the U.S. legal framework. The sources framed it as having incredibly high stakes.
Wow, so this trial isn't just about one person or one platform. It can set precedents for, well, huge parts of the crypto space, especially regarding privacy and code.
That's the perspective that was reported, yes. It brings these core, technical, almost philosophical elements of crypto right into the courtroom. The potential legal precedents could really impact how decentralized apps, code transparency, and user privacy tools are treated under U.S. law going forward.
Okay, let's try and connect this back to the market picture we started with. How might these two big developments from June 16th, the SEC potentially easing off with rule withdrawals, and this Tornado Cash trial threatening core crypto ideas, how might they influence market dynamics or investor feelings?
It's a fascinating mix, isn't it? On one side, you have the SEC action. Some might see that as reducing regulatory uncertainty, maybe a positive for the industry, if fewer prescriptive rules are coming down the pipe. Less overhang, perhaps?
Okay, so potentially bullish, or at least less bearish from that angle?
Possibly. But then, on the other hand, the Tornado Cash trial introduces a different kind of uncertainty, a really fundamental one, maybe. It raises serious questions about the legal standing of privacy tools, even just publishing open source code if it's used in DeFi applications involved in illicit activity.
So it's like Potentially less new regulation coming,
Eh.
but potentially a major legal challenge to existing technology and principles. That feels like a real tension.
Exactly. A fascinating tension. And it underscores that the market isn't just reacting to, charts and technical levels. It's also processing these big overarching signals from regulators and the courts. These things definitely factor into sentiment.
Right. Okay, let's wrap up our deep dive into the snapshot from June 16th, 2025. If we pull it all together, what are the main takeaways from these sources?
Well, first, a market with really mixed signals across the major coins. We saw Cardano balancing potential price limits against its underlying development strength.
We saw Solana looking pretty risky, facing that critical technical test near $140, with significant downside potential mentioned.
And Bitcoin attempting that upside breakout above 160 Bay, showing some bullish potential at least.
Yeah, and there was the whole theme of looking for alternatives, both the very visible hype around meme coins,
Right.
like PEPE, with those ATH predictions.
Mm-hmm. And also that quieter search, scanning for potentially under-the-radar opportunities, specifically mentioned in DeFi with that Mutuum F
And
reference.
absolutely critical, those potentially conflicting forces coming from the regulatory and legal side. The SEC withdrawing proposed rules, possibly signaling a shift.
While simultaneously, the Tornado Cash trial looms large, carrying warnings about redefining fundamental aspects of DeFi, open source, and crypto privacy in the U.S.
Digging into just one day's worth of reports like this, finding these specific details, seeing the technical levels being watched, the different pockets of hype, and crucially, connecting it all to the big regulatory and legal moves, that's how you start to build a really informed picture, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It shows how all these different threads, market actions, specific token buzz, regulatory shifts, legal challenges are all happening concurrently.
It's definitely not just about passively consuming headlines. It's seeing how these pieces, all landing on the same day, June 16th, might interact and maybe shape what happens next.
Which really leads to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to consider. Given all these varied inputs from just that one day, the market signals, the token-specific hype, these major regulatory and legal tests, how do you see these factors converging or maybe even conflicting in the weeks and months ahead? From everything we discussed based on these June 16th sources, what do you think might be the single most impactful development to keep an eye on?